So Nintendo has recently added Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games to the Nintendo Switch online service. About time, I know, but still though, it is cool to finally be able to play these games, whether it be games that I haven't played in a long time or games that I'm only just getting into. And to be frank, after playing some of these games on my Nintendo Switch alongside playing on my own Nintendo handheld systems that I own, I must say that I really adore Nintendo's handheld systems and a part of me really misses them. Now when I say I miss Nintendo's handheld systems, I am exclusively talking about their dedicated handheld systems. The Nintendo Switch is technically a handheld system and one can use it exclusively as a handheld system, but there are a handful of issues I have with the Switch that brings it down from being my best Nintendo handheld system. That's just usually what happens when a product sells itself as being two things in one. It comes with the compromise of it being not really the best thing on either of the two things it markets itself as. I mean, why do you think most women have a personal vendetta against those 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner bottles? So today I'm going to be listing mainly 3 things that I adore about Nintendo's handheld systems. 3 things that I feel the Nintendo Switch is falling behind on. 1. Nintendo handheld games got experimental. One of the best parts for Nintendo about making a game for a handheld system was that for the most part it required both a lot less time and money to create compared to a home console game, mostly due to handheld games at the time simply being a lot less ambitious compared to home console games. I mean, just look at Mario Kart DS and compare that to the latest home console Mario Kart game when it released. Certainly the home console one looked like it required a lot more time and money to create. I can only assume that because of this, Nintendo felt a lot more comfortable with releasing weird experimental game ideas onto their handheld systems. Game ideas that I don't think Nintendo would have ever done on their home consoles in fear of possible low sales. Like if Nintendo sells a home console game and it performs poorly, then it's a pretty big blow for the company, but if a handheld game does poorly, then it's only ever just a moment where Nintendo goes, oh well, looks like nobody give a damn about Kirby Battle Royale, time to move on I guess. I think Nintendo wouldn't have felt that confident about series like Rhythm Heaven, Wario Land, or WarioWare if they were initially released on Nintendo home consoles, so they put them out on their handheld systems where they saw success. But don't just take my word for it, just look at when these aforementioned series actually did get releases on Nintendo home consoles, where the success that these series had on Nintendo's handheld systems didn't exactly translate over to these home console releases. For instance, Wario Land Shake had only sold little over 1 million copies, Rhythm Heaven Fever presumably sold less than 1 million copies, and even something as recent as WarioWare Get It Together on the Nintendo Switch, only 1.27 million copies sold. What I'm trying to say is that I'm a big fan when Nintendo does something niche and experimental and new, and I personally think that the best platforms for when Nintendo does this was on their handheld systems. That's not to say that Nintendo has never done anything weird or experimental on their home console games, of course they have, but it's these bizarre and experimental game releases on Nintendo's handheld systems as to why I love these systems a lot. Something that I feel is lacking with the Switch. Perhaps it's because we're pretty much nearly due for a next generation Nintendo system soon, but I feel like the recent releases on Nintendo Switch for a while now have gone kind of predictable, I guess? Let me explain. Because of the Nintendo Switch being the first HD portable system by Nintendo, the games that Nintendo develops for the thing probably require a lot more time and resources to make compared to any of Nintendo's prior handheld systems, which I can only guess means that Nintendo are very selective as to which games they decide to make for the Switch now, especially since early experimental Switch titles like Nintendo Labo didn't exactly do so well. This leads to most of the games Nintendo releases now on the Switch to be really play it safe and predictable. No matter how you feel about the quality of these games, both Nintendo and the consumers know that something like a new Mario Sports game, a new Splatoon game, any game with Zelda on it, a successor to the Wii Sports game, a new Kirby game, HD ports, and HD remasters will do well on the Switch. Don't get me wrong, some of these games are still great and does boost the system's library to make the Switch a better system, but I kind of miss when Nintendo attempted something experimental and something that we haven't seen before. I'm just saying, Nintendo, you had something there with ARMS, but you never did anything with it. 2. Nintendo handhelds had games. Like, really good games. I feel like I need to include an asterisk on this one because I do think that the Nintendo Switch actually does have some really good games. This one is just going to mostly be me praising a handful of Nintendo handheld games. Nintendo's handheld systems are home to what I consider to be some of my favorite games and game series of all time. For example, WarioWare. Initially starting off on Game Boy Advance, WarioWare revolves around having to complete a series of micro games that are usually as long as a few seconds in quick succession, and they progressively get faster and faster the more you complete them. Lose all 4 of your lives and the game ends. Very simple yet a lot of fun and incredibly replayable. Since the first game, WarioWare Inc., there have been many installments across a variety of Nintendo's handheld systems, such as Twisted, Touch, Not You, and Gold. There were even installments on Nintendo's home consoles that were pretty good too, like Smooth Moves and Get It Together. Yeah, even though that game sold poorly, it was still a really good game. Then there's Rhythm Heaven, a series of incredibly fun rhythm games with incredible looking 2D visuals and clever designs, and that series has mostly been on Nintendo's handheld systems, with the only exception being Fever on Wii. But it's not just the original IPs that make me adore Nintendo's handheld systems, it's also the installments of already well-established Nintendo IPs on these handheld systems. The first one I want to talk about is Mario Kart. It always seems that most people have a different opinion as to which Mario Kart they consider the best. I hear people say 8, I hear people say Wii, I hear people say 64, hell, there's probably some sad soul out there who thinks that Super Circuit is the best. And here I am to tell you all that my favorite is DS. It's for a variety of different reasons. You got the great controls, which at this point they pretty much perfected when it came to portable Mario Kart. You got the great tracks, the memorable music, the small but absolutely great character roster. Arguably the last Mario Kart to have a great battle mode, mostly because it was the last time Nintendo made Balloon Battle fun before adding that stupid mandatory timer that ruined the whole thing. Shine Runners. Just shine runners in general. And of course you got mission mode, a series of very fun original challenges that made this game super replayable. And I also remember it being very difficult when I was younger. Alright, what seems to be the problem today? I think it all started with that Wiggler boss battle from Mario Kart DS's level 7 mission mode, and also the elementary school teachers yelling at me for not answering the math questions properly, but it was mostly that damn caterpillar. Then we have Mario Party. While I don't think I would call it my absolute favorite in the series, Mario Party DS is still an incredibly underrated title, and I would say it is still one of my favorites in the series. You got the great mini games and the amazingly designed boards, both of which were designed on the theme of your characters being very small, shrunken down to microscopic size. Really, there's not a lot I can say about this game. It's just a really solid portable Mario Party game with a very fun Honey I Shrunk the Kids theme to it. Really, the only issues that I have with the game is that it's small, both figuratively and literally. There isn't a lot of characters to choose from and the character boards aren't that large. But hey, much rather play this one than Super Mario Party any day of the week, that's for sure. And then we have the magnum opus in Nintendo's handheld game library, Kid Icarus Uprising. Really can't go a single video without mentioning this game, huh? I won't say much about the game here since there is honestly a lot I can say about it, but it has everything that I would ever really want from a single player game. You got fun combat, great music, a selection of different weapons to choose from, memorable characters, story and writing that knows when to have fun and when to be serious at the right moments, impressive visuals, achievements to unlock in online multiplayer mode, and gameplay controls that are just kind of okay, honestly. Basically, Kid Icarus Uprising swings and pretty much knocks it out of the park in most of the departments. It's in my top 5 games of all time. I adore this game, and it is only available on my favorite handheld of all time, the 3DS. Which, the more I think about it, the more unfortunate it sounds. Please port this game, Nintendo, for the love of God, I beg of you. Basically, Nintendo's portable game library is what makes Nintendo's handheld systems amazing and contributes as to why I miss them dearly. And as I said in the beginning of the segment, I don't really have anything to complain about in terms of good games on the Switch since it already has that. Nintendo Switch has games, just like what that dumb commercial that became a meme said so. 3. Design and comfortability. I got a question. How come nearly every design for Nintendo's handheld systems don't miss? I say nearly because there are some exceptions like the goofy looking Virtual Boy, the original Game Boy which looked and felt like you were playing on a brick with a screen and buttons on it, and the Game Boy Color which looked and felt like you were playing on a slightly slimmer brick with a screen and buttons on it. Really, the design of Nintendo's handheld systems haven't been mastered until Game Boy Advance. I love this little idiot. The landscape shape of the system makes it the most comfortable Game Boy to date. The L and R shoulder buttons are big and nicely rest on your fingers. The face buttons and D-pad feel amazing to use, and it's just a great looking system. Especially my favorite variant, which is Glacier. Transparent plastic really needs to make a comeback with today's tech products. And I can't say much about the SP model and the Micro model because I've never owned those two nor held one. But the SP still looked really cool with the whole clamshell design, and the Micro mostly looks and sounds like a cool little novelty system. Kinda felt like Nintendo made it to show off to people just how small they can make their handhelds go. Can you believe we were able to pack portable gaming peak in a size this small? Then we have my favorite design out of all of the Nintendo handhelds released, the DS and 3DS. They have two screens, the bottom ones being touchscreens specifically, microphones, the full 4 face buttons, and of course the clamshell design. You pull it out, open it up, and play it for either a quick session or for minutes on top of minutes, and when you need to stop playing, you just close it up and slip it back into your pocket. It's genius, it's compact, it's the best. I really do miss that second screen especially. I've heard people say that the DS's dual screen design was only ever just an unnecessary gimmick, but I wholeheartedly disagree. Sure, some games did make some annoying uses of the touch screens, but it was also just super useful when it came to displaying additional information about the game. Whether it be showing you the progress bar on a level in New Super Mario Bros., showing you a bird's eye view of the track alongside the racer's items in Mario Kart DS, or to just display text and UI elements that would have traditionally been displayed on the top screen, the dual screen feature on both the DS and 3DS were always incredibly useful to me. But at the end of the day, what all of these systems have in common is that they all have great designs and they are immensely comfortable to use. Two things that I unfortunately can't say about the Nintendo Switch. In retrospect, I only ever tolerated the Switch when I played it in handheld form. I don't hate it, but I don't really like it so much. I tolerate it. First off, I want to talk about comfortability. The Switch is a heavy little thing, heavy enough to where it can honestly begin to be a pain to play after a while. Not helping is the shape of the system being very long, large, and also a lack of any kind of gripping on the back of the system. Also, I've just never been a fan of the Switch's face buttons, D-pad, and trigger specifically in my opinion. They're too stiff and clicky and overall a downgrade compared to the controls we had with Nintendo's prior handheld systems. And I know it's completely subjective, but in terms of design, the Switch is kind of just an ugly little thing. Whether it be bezels so large they can fit a bunch of talkies over them, the overly exposed vent system that is barely being protected by these thin plastic lines, the fact that my original Switch has this ugly looking grease gloss all over the back of the system that no matter how many times I try to keep it clean, it always still has that ugly gloss over it. These design issues would be fixed on the OLED model, such as the smaller bezels, better vent system, and the supposedly better plastic they use, but that still doesn't fix the issues in terms of comfortability. In fact, it may be even worse because the Switch OLED is slightly more heavier than the original Switch. Truly sad. If only Nintendo had created a Switch model that not only has a great design but was also comfortable to use. Oh, but wait, they actually have done that. with the Lite model. Yeah, it's kind of funny that my favorite Switch model ended up being the cheapest one available, but it is true, I really like my Switch Lite when I used it. Every issue that I had mentioned about the Switch in terms of comfortability and design has been resolved with this Lite model. Comfortability? Well, the system now weighs a whole lot less compared to the regular Switch, and it's not as long or as large as the regular Switch too, which means that even though it still lacks any kind of grips on the back of the system, my hands can now easily hold the system and thus play it for longer sessions, especially since they've actually redesigned the face buttons, D-pad, and triggers. For the face buttons and triggers, they've actually redesigned them so they require a lot less pressure for them to work, and they have a nice soft push to them, which means that button mashing on this thing kind of feels stimulating. And the D-pad on the system is an actual D-pad, and a great feeling one too. Don't know how Nintendo created a great feeling D-pad on their Switch Lite model, while I think the D-pad present on the Nintendo Switch is complete dog water, but hey, the system has a great D-pad nevertheless. And the design of this thing is superb, the system coming in a variety of different grid looking colors, the entire system being in one piece, the system sharing the same vent system as the Switch OLED model. The bezels themselves are still somewhat talkie sized unfortunately, but the bezels themselves are now colored depending on which system you get, so now they blend in much more and you honestly forget they're even there after some time. They've done it. Nintendo has created a Switch model that I can confidently put alongside all of their other handheld systems in terms of great design and comfort. And hey, the Switch Lite itself is technically a dedicated Nintendo handheld since you can't connect it to the TV like you could do with a regular Switch. Kind of cool to see that even though it's not really Nintendo's top priority, they've never technically stopped making good dedicated handheld systems. And yeah, there you have it. Those were the reasons as to why I miss Nintendo's handheld systems. Even though I do miss them, I'm still unsure if I would want Nintendo to go back to the old days where they had a dedicated home console and dedicated handheld system, or if I want them to make another hybrid system for the next generation. Because I ultimately really do like the convenience of the Nintendo Switch's hybrid scheme, so I'm not sure which one I would rather want. But whatever they decide to do, I think we can all wholeheartedly agree that Nintendo's handheld systems kinda slap.
Right here. All your needs will be met.
I'm hungry. In a minute!